So welcome to another episode of Simon Says. Again, I have Lyra here today.
Hello.
And Lyra, we just want to continue straight from last week. We talk about different topic. We talk about multicultural aspiration of Malaysia. Now it is the month of August. We talk about Merdeka and Malaysia Day. But with this background, today we really want to talk about, just the climate of media that is happening right now. Because when you look at news, there seems to be a lot of contention, right? Of course, a couple of weeks ago, very big news was that the government wanted to regulate social media provider. But remember, we're just talking about, first we provider, then user. So actually, I was a bit surprised because my initial reaction was that it's a social media user control. But then after you read more carefully, it's the provider. But I think it's just a matter of time, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when it comes to, I guess it's really the sort of contention that you have when, especially the case that we see in US right now, with the landmark ruling on the antitrust law against Google. Because, basically they were like the dominant and basically making all the search default by what they suggest and things like that. So I felt like it's very interesting sort of progression that is happening over there and maybe something that we could really glean from it.
Yeah, many people thought it would never happen to Google in US. It has partially happened in Europe and things like that. Now, by the way, just for the benefit of our audience, Google, for example, will pay 4 to 10 billion each year to Apple, for example. So Google will be the default search, and it's not even Safari. So, that's the deal with the devil. And I guess from Apple point of view, do you get Google in your iPhone more?
More and more there's a lot of prompting that, hey, let's move on to the
To
Google
Google.
search engine. But nope, I was like, nope.
You're used to Safari and things like
Yeah.
that. And I guess it's not Apple's core business, so they are quite happy to take the billion. And of course, why we are talking about the search engine dominance, because it relates to the big tech dominance. And of course, we come back to, and it's very ironic, right? After Prime Minister announced and Fahmi, of course, came out and say going to have social media provider control, then all of a sudden, PMS's own posting on Hamas was removed from Meta. Let's discuss a little bit on that, right? Because so when it first happened, I think more than a week ago, then here's a headline from Al Jazeera. And I think it's, when was that? 1st of August, Malaysia Prime Minister Anwar slams Meta. Okay. And he said the social media platform, cowardice and acting on behalf of Israel. Zuckerberg, have ties with Jews and things like that. But I highly doubt it's pro-Israel because it's all about money. It's all about dollars and cents. But one of the things about content being removed from whatever platform, whether it's, I guess your generation don't use Facebook so much, right? But you use IG,
Yes.
so it's still part of Meta.
Yep.
And I think the younger crowd go TikTok.
TikTokers,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's the same, right? Actually, I don't know. Could you confirm? It's like a lot of people say TikTok doesn't have strong moderation in terms of content removal. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. Generally, you can find some of the things that I can't find in IG, I could find it in TikTok. So I'm not too sure.
Is it their hands-off approach or?
Then again, I felt like it is also in a way, like let's say certain things that are against CCP. I felt like those were a bit more controlled.
Okay.
But anything else that doesn't relate to China at all, I felt like there were generally more freedom.
So the Western, left, right, the woke, it doesn't really concern CCP as much.
But I think they are regulating more on, let's say, if you're giving like signals in trading and things like that, that will be quite clamped down. I think because there were, I guess it's not so much on like TikTok platform itself that is regulating it. It's more like there is a power behind it. So we were talking about all this. Before this, we were just talking about the censorship that is, at the end of the day, the media is pandering to the control, which is behind the scene, all these fund managers, all this financial institutions. So I guess it's very similar also, the kind of control that you see in TikTok as well. So maybe IG is also somewhat regulated in that sense, but it's just that IG has a certain different kind of standard because obviously from what we have seen in especially the censoring of the former prime minister and former president Trump. So I think that's a different kind of agenda altogether, as in Zuckerberg himself is more like, I guess he's a bit more of an activist, like he has his own sense of righteousness.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about the last presidential election cycle, 2020, Zuckerberg put in his personal money, I think estimated 20 to 30 million to put people on the ground. Basically, it's like an election activist kind of thing. I mean, no matter how rich you are, 20, 30 million is still significant. So his own personal money, so that certain states, he was to, Colorado, for example, became very, very blue because of his efforts. But let's talk about the nature of social media. It's like, I mean, I'm not really a social media user, but I do use social media for news. And I think that is becoming more and more prevalent for a lot of people, right? Some people, all their news come from IG or all their news come from Facebook, for example. And I guess if you read news from social media, it's not surprising to hear every now and then certain news article is being removed, right? So what's your reaction when you first heard that Meta took down PMX post on Hamas?
Well, to be frank, initially I wasn't thinking about the fact that our head of state is actually being censored. I just thought, hey, that's kind of sensible, as in because it is. I mean, the climate is such that we have been promoting. I think
terrorism.
Yeah, exactly. There's no other way to say that, as in because of our vocal. I mean, you're talking about the head of state that is really very pro-Palestinian state and things like that. When you obviously have, I mean, an act of terrorism that is done against state of Israel. So I think there's no other way to like tone it down. So in fact, when I first read it, I thought, hey, actually that's not a bad thing. Then after that, when you think about it, hey, actually that's a censoring at a different kind of level. So yeah, then after that only then I begin to think about, hey, maybe that's not a good thing after all. I mean, if we are moving towards freedom of speech, freedom of expression, or posts should be allowed. It's just that there should be a certain guidelines that are made clear that what can be and what cannot. I mean, obviously, like pornography, all those sort of things, it should be like banned completely.
Yeah, talking about censorship of head of state, of course, you mentioned Trump, which happens at multiple levels during. I mean, we're not even talking about candidate Trump. We're not even talking about president-elect Trump. We're not even talking about president outgoing Trump. We're talking about when he was actual president, that there was so much censoring, and of course I mean when they were summoned to Senate, when they're summoned to certain things. I mean, I don't know how many of you have watched Jack Dorsey of X, formerly called Twitter, of course, or Zuckerberg themselves go to Capitol Hill. And you look at the way they deny things. They just treat everyone as idiots, And then, of course, the response actually very similar to what Meta Malaysia provided for PMX. And it's a technical oversight and things like that. But they will just do it again and again and again and again, which leads me to the next point. Should social media even be allowed to censor? And they'll be like, well, it's my platform, it's my content, I provide all the server. But maybe like, right, let me just provide a little bit of because I've been studying this issue for a while, and just provide a bit of overview, then maybe you can give your opinion in terms of censorship. So when internet first came around, I mean, we're talking about just 15, 20 years ago, even Malaysia, can you imagine even our former Prime Minister Mahathir is like, I will subscribe to the Internet Code of Conduct with MSC being developed in Malaysia. He said he won't censor online portal, and which he did fulfill this promise. He didn't censor Malaysia Insider or Malaysia Kini for the longest time.
Yep.
And later on, he said he kind of regretted that commitment. But anyway, fast forward, you look at Meta, Twitter, IG, they are really YouTube. and especially COVID time, we talk about so many times. Every time you want to do something that is against the mainstream media narrative, they'll put there some asterisks or whatever.
Warning.
Warning, you are reading unverified. But of course, we now know, and more people know, that the whole COVID narrative was bullshit. But anyway, coming back to the whole idea, and because technology came from US, they have a special provisions because they have a FEC, which is basically their commissioner to govern the internet and things like that. So they have a provision which basically validate the social media provider as just being platform. So they always say, well, we are just platform. You can't blame us for all this kind of thing. But then they do the reverse by censoring. But when they censor, they don't say we are platform. But, we are content provider. We are moderator. Do you know that after 2016 elections, Google, Meta, they hired tons of moderator. You basically pay a pretty executive level kind of salary to just kind of read news and say, maybe this has problem, maybe that has problem. So it's like it's basically like 1984 human censorship. So anyway, my whole point is, look, if you say you are platformed, then you shouldn't censor anything. But if you say you are moderator, you manage the content, then you can remove anything you don't like. Then you step into the realm of publisher. You should be subjected to the same law like The Star, like Nikkei Times, like New York Times. They can't simply, now of course, this just because they're traditional media doesn't stop them from telling lies, but they are under much more stringent law. And first and foremost, of course, the defamation law. So what's your view on all this? I mean, do you see inconsistency or maybe hypocritical behavior?
Oh, definitely. I mean, definitely hypocritical. As in, if you think about it, I mean, each one of us, let's say you are renting a space, and each one of us are paying our rent, the due rent, and suddenly you're saying that, hey, I don't like the way that you're dressing out your store, so I'm going to kick you out just because of that. So if you put that same context in social media, because you're just the service provider, you're the platform that provides a space for people to express their own opinions, however they want to do it. Some people even use social media as a journaling. So can you just censor me because I'm like journaling the certain things that, like bad things that are happening to me, and I just feel like making the whole world know about my issues. And just because the moderator does not like it, and can I be censored? So I felt like the answer should be no, because if you say you're a platform, then you should be just a platform. I mean, you have the rights to clean up the space and things like that. I mean, that totally we are appreciative, but anything else more than that, you are actually intruding my privacy. You're intruding my boundary. So then what are you? Are you policing me in terms of assault? So because you mentioned about 1984, it's really an act of policing that we are no foreign to it, especially when we see it in the COVID era, where even when people are just saying that, hey, maybe you can use certain other method of healing from COVID, and you may not necessarily have to have vaccine.
You can fake news immediately.
Yes, exactly. And you are being warned. Like, no, I mean, because this is against the WHO. But what makes the WHO more superior than those like medical specialists who are really in the line of controlling the infectious disease?
And what makes Wikipedia more of an authority? Because we know, for example, Wikipedia is very, very left-leaning. So every time you put an opinion piece that is more conservative, that's more libertarian, that's more center, I mean, any topic at all, I mean, this is just a fact. All their moderators are left-leaning. And because that's the people they hire, that's the people that fund them. So you're going to get a very left-leaning kind of thing. Now, of course, Reddit is very similar. So, but Reddit it is a little bit harder to control because it's more discussion flow. I mean, if you're into any kind of hobby or things like that, people will tell you Reddit is the place to go. I mean, if you can't, I mean, of course, if you can see YouTube video is the best, but in terms of pure discussion, that's why now Reddit is in discussion with OpenAI and things like that. can an API be provided so that, hey, ChatGPT can extract from Reddit? I mean, imagine, that is already being discussed, but there's a whole wealth of information. But then, that's the thing, if it's like an open forum kind of discussion, should it be censored? We are just an ordinary user. But I guess that is open to debate. But if we just focus on head of state, I mean, for me personally, after 10 days already, usually if a hot issue is happening, it's best to allow some cooling off period so your mind is a bit clearer. So, I would say the same thing that, because when Trump was censored, I would say that, look, a head of state shouldn't be censored because they are public persona and they should be held accountable by their parliaments, by their voters. So I would say the same thing also, that yes, of course, promoting, if you want to use the word promoting terrorism, maybe, is it a red line? I'm not sure, because so many people around the world are like so hateful of Israel. I'm talking about traditional allies, even Australia, even Japan and things like that. I mean, I'm not talking about the whole nation, but you have politicians from those countries who are more like, on Hamas side, which I don't know, at all human level, I cannot comprehend that, because whoever comes to your house and kill and rape and steal, how can you say I'm going to have peace? It's just not feasible, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, actually, I think Israel really, really has no other choice except to really wipe out the top leadership that is actually inciting violence and
Yep.
really just continuously pushing for the sympathy of the people to just keep getting the momentum going on. So it's not like they are doing it in good faith, they are literally having that ill intent and determined to kill the Israeli. So I think what Benjamin Netanyahu did was really something that I think you need a whole lot of determination to really just we need to put an end to it. I mean, there comes a time where people are going to just say enough is enough.
Yeah, because even for Israel themselves, within their own government, it is very, very split kind of governments. Then you have those people who feel like, hey, maybe we can have a two-state solution. But I think after this, as long as Netanyahu is still in power, he will not be agreeable to two-state solution. If it's going to be two-state solution, there needs to be a buffer.
Exactly. I mean, the interesting thing about this whole thing is when people talk about two-state solution, they always say, hey, let's go back to before the formation, before all this thing even happened. But you are not making the terrorists accountable for the act that they did on October 7th. So I think that itself is a two matter altogether, but yet people tend to just blur the line.
Yeah, because it's the most convenient way, which kind of reminds me, in commercial world, if there's a split in business and let's say, dentists or engineer or lawyers, obviously if there's a split, you can't say the other person cannot practice anymore, right? So they'll be like, okay, whoever is being bought out, they'll be like, okay, for the next 3 or 5 years, you cannot practice within how many kilometer radius and things like that. These are all very
The
normal
competing interests.
Yeah, so it is very common clause. So if I'm Israel, I would say, look, if anyone is going to fund Palestine, fine. You're not going to be within 100 miles radius from me. That's it. You want to go to Jordan, you want to go to Saudi, you want to go, France, you want to take them, you want to go to Italy, I don't care. So it's like when you start to say things like this, nobody actually want them. Egypt doesn't want them. And even though Egypt is a neighbor, that's why there's a lot of misconception about how Palestine is landlocked, as if Israel is the only neighbor. No, they have many neighbors, and they were rejected by all neighbors. But anyway, I think enough on Palestine. And so I kind of want to conclude today's, because I think we're going to do a few episodes leading up to Malaysia Day, again focusing on freedom, pursuit of happiness. That's always our main theme, because one of the things, and we have heard this term being used in the last 20, 30 years, the middle class trap. And people say Malaysia is in the middle class trap. But I think we sort of mentioned in this show before that when you look at COVID especially, and you look at what's happening even in Western democracies like UK just basically becoming more and more socialist, Australia becoming more and more socialist. I mean, New Zealand is even worse, Canada is even worse. These are nations with rich common law and equity kind of, which basically, even at the turn of 19th century, they are the most, I mean, it's not biased or anything. It's just a fact that British law is the fairest, recognized worldwide, and that's why everyone can agree to use that for trade. But anyway, it's like now all these nations are heading towards socialism. It's almost like whoever is in charge wants to get rid of the middle class. I mean, not very obvious, but So we talk about one of the news today. Just now at dinner, we just talk about remember the Madani house incident, and Reda president had come out and said, well, if the developer are forced to come out with money to do the Madani project, it's going to cause the M40 and above. He didn't mention T20. Obviously, it will cause their purchase of real estate more. And it's a bit like Obama's case also, right? When they say you want to expand it, and that's the lie that Obama told, is that your premium will remain the same. Actually, when you want to give healthcare to more people for free, your premium can be the same and maybe all your rights will be reduced. If you want to maintain the same right, I think many stories came in that their premium became 4 times, 5 times, 6 times more. Finally, Obamacare was killed on technicality. But anyway, I want to come back on all these things is because somebody was just saying that now more and more, especially with Trump coming back, and a lot of people in the market seems to think that he is on a course to win, right? And even some of my very CCP leaning friends and family are also kind of say, when they look at Biden, of course, Kamala, nobody really think very highly of her. From this part of the world. And somebody was just saying that, look, we are facing yet another major media war. So what do you think of this? And in fact, the term that this person used was atmospheric war. So what do you think of this?
Yeah, I definitely do think it's more atmospheric than anything else, because a lot of us, what we don't realize is that we are affected by the news that we hear. So if you really think about it, if we can be affected emotionally by what we are hearing, and we know sound travels through air, and that on its own is really somewhat like an atmospheric war that we are encountering. So never before that we have been told that, hey, you must do this, you must do that. So I think what the media is really doing is that you must vote a certain way, you must do a certain way. There's a set of conduct that you have to follow. So if anything that goes against this, then you are fascist, you are someone that is not, like, you're not conforming.
So you're racist.
Exactly.
And that's what happened in UK right now.
Exactly. The riot that is happening, and you begin to see that there's that 2-tier system. And the fact is, the Prime Minister himself in the UK has been calling the opposition out earlier on before he
became government, he called it a 2-tier system.
Exactly. And now he is being called that, and it's not acceptable for him. So what is acceptable then? So if you have two sort of policing, two sort of tiering, and the way that you're grouping people, then that on its own is not even democratic at all. So with that, with what is happening, you can begin to see that, hey, the media are so quick to fold when Biden say, I quit. And you begin to wonder, hey, aren't you guys like...
Did someone provide the script?
Exactly. So we talked in Simon Says before that the media is just like an echo chamber. You hear one thing, you begin to hear, every other media is just parroting each other.
Yep.
So with that, I think it is really something that we can't take lightly of. Because if we are so used to, because all these things starts from education. If we're so used to hearing like there's a set ways of you must draw within a box, I think naturally we will be more susceptible to all these things that we hear. And before we knew it, we could either end up like what is happening in the UK, that the people lose hope, and they don't even go out and vote, and that's the kind of government that they actually voted in. So with that, I think even in the US, yes, it looks like Trump is heading towards victory. But what is interesting is also Kamala Harris. I think she purposely put out a sort of front, but in fact, if you hear what she has been declaring, like what has been burdened must be unburdened. I mean, those sort of things actually is quite Marxist sort of slogan. So people, I think, take lightly because she like call herself Mamala and like laugh with that crazy
The
laugh.
crackle.
Yeah, so I mean it's funny. I mean some of the quotes are really like you'll be thinking, is she mad or something? And yet, I think that exactly is what has been happening with the LGBT movement when they are like just doing things like gaining sympathy or gaining like maybe just trying to be a different kind of Obama,
Yeah.
a lady version, but maybe a bit different. So people will be a bit more sympathetic. I mean, we don't forget that US has just gone out of that BLM movement where, I mean, obviously you have a lot of the sports player, Hollywood people who are like really, really susceptible towards that. And how do you say no to someone of your, well, now she's like obviously quoting herself to be a
A black, yeah.
so I guess they know their script, they know how to fight that sort of war. And if we say it just enough, people might just believe it because we are in that sort of era where people are really just thinking, just because you said it, hey, let's just cut the person some slack.
Do you feel maybe the situation has changed since BLM and of course those days when Trump came in and there's a lot of don't stand for the flag, be racist, BLM and things like that. Do you feel there has been a shift, and especially after COVID, maybe people have become smarter, maybe more, okay, maybe smarter is the wrong word, maybe they have become more informed?
I think so. I think maybe they're a bit more cautious as well, that they know, I guess people can learn from the mistakes. And
I think more people are kind of like suspicious of mainstream media. But let's end with this, and we talk about education, you talk about it already. Maybe you can share a couple of things that will help our viewers and listeners, if they really want, because I find that when we talk about all these things, a lot of people, the first reaction will be, wow, it's just so information heavy, how do I even get up to speed? They find it very difficult to follow the conversation. But the thing is, if you don't educate, I mean, education we already mentioned, but what else do you think people can do that will, because we're talking about atmospheric war, that if you don't do things to get yourself out from the influence, you will just be like a mind control masses. So what would you suggest if someone say, look, I after COVID or whatever, I'm really scared of all these things already, I want to start somewhere. What can I do?
Well, I guess one way to start is really to verify. I mean, you could also do verification through social media. Actually, obviously, you look for the full clip. You don't just look for a short clip and then the edited version. You don't want to look for the edited version. You look for the original raw file. And I mean, surely many users will be posting the whole thing, and you begin to just see what are the differences. I mean, because some people are just more visual, so they just want to like look at videos. So you can still do that. You can still verify it, but you want to make sure where the sources are coming from.
Yeah.
So if you know where the sources are coming from, you don't want to just take like a portion of it. You want to really just see the whole thing and just have a gauge, and you just judge for yourself whether or not this whole thing is what the media is saying it is. And I think people need to start to have critical thinking.
Yep.
It's not to say that you are being like judgy all of a sudden. You're just verifying things. Just because people say it's correct, must it be correct? So you just kind of like do your own due diligence and begin to find out. So there are fun ways to do it. I think if you like social media, then use social media. I mean, obviously people are also using social media to do verification and read news and things like that. So if you don't like reading, I mean, if you like reading, then you go for different kind of sources like we have talked before. Just read like alternative media. But also, I guess, the crowd that you hang out with makes a whole lot of difference.
Yep.
If your friends are all like taking news from just a source and
Yep.
everyone is just reading off Facebook, and you want to you want to just know that, hey, maybe I should also listen to some people who are doing other parts, other reading and things like that.
I think one of the things people need to understand is really, if you know exactly what you're looking for example, you go to Facebook, you find certain media outlet and things like that, then it's fine because you know what you're looking for. But what if you don't know what you're looking for, and you go to Google search, you go to Bing or whatever, then you start to type Trump assassination or whatever, then that is the opportunity for the social media, the big tech, to begin to lead you on, and they will show you articles which they want to present from their point of view. So I think, and I think it was Biden, before he dropped out, one of the co-chairman of his campaign, I think it's Jeffrey Katzenberg, Steven Spielberg's associate, and he said something very interesting. And because he was trying to appeal to the voters and say, come on, believe in us. Then he said, look, trust us. If you don't trust us, still trust us, but verify. So he said the same thing. And I think to end, I'm going to suggest another thing, which is, I think people really have to know the media outlet. Like, for example, like in US, of course, now we know the alternative. You have Breitbart, you have Airport Time and things like that. But then it was Steve Bannon who said that sometimes it is more useful to watch the mainstream media. So he said, look, if you want what the mainstream overload, he used the word, is trying to say, then you should see MSNBC, because that is really a very mainstream presentation. If you want to see what the Washington insiders are trying to talk about, then you should follow something like Axiom or things like that. So, for example, in Malaysia, you want to know people who are interested in trade and commerce. You go to the Edge, for example, and you want our neighbor perspective on Malaysia politics. You go to CNA, for example.
Or kopitiam.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this will be very basic, because if you can't even do that, then I don't know. I can only say that you will be forever under this atmospheric pressure. So maybe in the next few episodes, when we talk about state, just a bit of preview, because it's heading towards Malaysia Day, we want to talk about states and federal again, and maybe continue to talk about how we can get out from this atmospheric control. So I think our time is up for this episode. So tune in for next time.
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.